Good afternoon to everyone, friends, family, and colleagues. I'm Dan Diker, president of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. Shalom, salam from Jerusalem, and a good afternoon from here. It's a good morning to those of you in North America, and a good noon to those of you on the European continent. This is a Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs National Security session. And we could not be more honored to have our special guest at a session of such great import. As many of you know, having received the invitation, uniting the Iranian opposition, outlawing the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of the Islamic Republic of Iran, obstacles and opportunities. Why is this different, and why is it so important? In the many Zoom sessions, live roundtables, conferences that many of the hundreds of people on this call have been involved with, I would venture to say that the majority of them have been about Iran's race for nuclear supremacy, its current race for 90% military-grade uranium, and the deep concern about Iran, the Iranian regime's terror proxy spread across the Middle East through the Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the special forces in Iraq, the Hamas in Gaza. Across the Middle East, clearly Iran's proxies are establishing a major terror footprint with drones and rockets and missiles. That has generally been the state of play of these conferences. Here today, we have a different take, and we are focusing on the IRGC's acute assault on the United Kingdom, on other European capitals, and as many of us know, on the United States, where the IRGC operative had attempted to murder former National Security Advisor of the United States and UN Ambassador John Bolton just a couple of years ago. There has been a long history of IRGC activity, assassination activity in the West, beginning back in 1985. We will remember that there were plane hijackings, attempted bombings against U.S. and other European interests starting 40 years ago. And here today, we are discussing this particular problem from the UK. We have some very special guests who are directly involved in countering the IRGC and their assault, their penetration of the UK. Vahid Beheshti, whom I and our team here at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs had the great honor to meet and consult with at the House of Lords as guests of Lord Polak, who is on this call, and I will be introducing him in a minute. Vahid is an extraordinary man. He is an Iranian-born British independent journalist. He may be today one of the best known figures and leaders of the Iranian opposition in the Iranian diaspora. He's a human rights activist and the director of Dort TV. He's been highlighting the IRGC's and Iran's human rights violations and has been working 24/7 on countering Iranian-backed extremism. He's worked with other European-based opposition leaders, and he's best known recently for a very, very risky 72-day hunger strike, which captured the imagination of leaders all over the world. And even more importantly, it captured the imagination of millions of Iranians from all over Iran, as well as in the Iranian diaspora. He risked his life. He survived it, and he managed within hours, together with Mattie Heaven, colleague, and his wife, to get 125 members of the parliament within hours to petition Prime Minister Sunak to proscribe, to outlaw, prohibit the IRGC in the United Kingdom. This follows the United States, the proscription of the IRGC back in 2019. This is very much at the top of the political agenda in the UK. So Vahid, we're very honored to have you, and I'm also going to introduce Mattie and then Lord Polak, and just ask Lord Polak just to start us off. It was through his great offices that we met you very recently in the United Kingdom. Mattie Heaven is a Conservative Party chairman political for the West Midlands region, and an Iranian-born Brit, and an honors student and graduate in crime, deviance, and society. She's now the director of the International Organization to Preserve Human Rights, where she focuses on women's rights and freedom of religion, has been fighting Islamist extremism and the Iranian regime for some years. And she spent an awful lot of time educating Western politicians and local authorities on the real serious threat posed by the Iranian regime towards the life of liberty and freedom in the West, and as well as the threats to tens of millions of Iranians across the Islamic Republic of Iran. So Lord Polak, who he's not on yet. So you know what, Lord Polak is expected to join us, and I'll introduce him when he does. I'm going to turn right to you, Vahid, to share with us briefly your journey and your efforts, the dangers that the IRGC is today posing to the United Kingdom. As I have learned, I know that MI5 has reported that between 10 and 15 assassination attempts of British figures in the last year alone. And please help us understand the acute dangers, what you are doing, and what is the possibility for countering the IRGC, getting them prescribed in the UK, and what those implications are for Europe and the United States and the Western Alliance.
Hi to everyone. I am really honored and glad that you have me here to speak to the audience. In the beginning, I have to say that 125 signature, it was with the great help of Lord Polak. So I have to say that in the beginning. But I think you describe IRGC a bit. I would like to, before I enter to the point that you mentioned, just very shortly, 1 or 2 minutes, I talk about IRGC. What is IRGC for those people who do not know what is IRGC? IRGC is a military group that has been created 44 years ago, straight away after the 1979 revolution in Iran, in order to protect. It's got two responsibilities. The first responsibility to protect and preserve the regime, the Iranian regime, and the second responsibility is to export the fanatic ideology of the regime to outside of the country, to the entire world. That is their main two responsibilities. And why this military group, which has got nothing to do with the military of Iran, has been created? Because this regime came on through revolution. They made lots of false promises to Iranian people. They knew they cannot keep the promises because they knew from the beginning these are the false promises. They knew very soon, few months after this revolution, it's going to be another revolution against the regime. So by the advice of their great allies, the Soviet Union in that time, they created this basically mafia military group in order to protect them against any revolution that was going to happen against the regime. So that's what is IRGC. And from 40...
You might mention the Quds Force as the external arm of the IRGC.
Exactly. The Quds Forces is the main branch of IRGC, which has the big responsibility outside of Iran. So all the assassinations since 44 years ago, we had officially we have 540 assassination officially. So that's happened. That's in past 44 years, politicians, human rights activists, journalists, and goes on. For example, we can name one of them, 1994 bombing Jewish center in Argentina. 85, as I remember, if I remember right, 85, they killed 85 people, innocent people, and injured more than 350 people. Shutting down Ukrainian air passenger plane with 2 missiles, and we can just go on and on and on. In just past, in their latest report of MI5 in UK, MI5, this is not we saying this, MI5 reported more than 10 attempted assassination, kidnapping, hostage taking happened since January till now in UK soil. Or we can go to the letter of 130 US congressmen from all parties, which they emphasize more than 30 attempted assassination, kidnapping, and hostage taking in past 5 years in Europe. We can go on and on. So this is a terrorist organization which they've been created 44 years ago. They've been funding all these little proxies in the region, as you mentioned, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, Hashd al-Sha'bi, and we can go on and on. This is just in the region, in America, in different countries, in Europe. They are funding all these terrorist activities. So we can call them the godfather of all these little terrorist groups in the region and outside. So we've been fighting this mafia group for years. But since the revolution of woman life freedom 9 months ago, started by the brutal killing of Mahsa Amini in Iran, me, Mattie, and our friends, human rights activists who they working with us, we were focused on IRGC. By the help of Mattie and her friends, we held 2 conferences inside the UK Parliament, focused on IRGC. We had many meetings with politicians, MPs, leaders, and we had basically in order to prescribe IRGC. And we had a parliamentary moment in January. We thought next 2-3 weeks, we are going to have them prescribed in UK. Then suddenly we experienced an obstacle in front of this movement. After we'd done our homework, we found that the obstacle is from Foreign Office. So we tried to have conversation to find out where is the obstacle, what is the obstacle, to sit down and bring our evidence again, talk about it. But when we were having conversation and discussion with our politicians in the UK, I can say 98% of these politicians, they are with us. They are pro-prescription in the UK. So we didn't know what to do anymore. Then that's a story of hunger strike. So the hunger strike starts from here. One day we were in middle of this conflict with the leaders to see what else we can do. Mattie was, then we had Iran International TV station, which they are based in London, relocate from London to DC. And Metropolitan Police tell the journalists, more than 100 journalists of Iran International TV station, that the police of UK cannot guarantee their safety and security anymore because of the threat of IRGC's agent that they walking free in UK soil. We had this so far here. Then one day, Mattie was, my wife, who's here, was on the phone with one of the Iran International TV station that she's got attacked in the middle of the street of London. That was the spark for me. So few days after that, I started my hunger strike in front of UK Foreign Affairs Office. It's gone till the day 72. We had lots of great achievement. As you said, one of the achievement was the 125 MPs who they write the letter to Rishi Sunak. I had the 2 official meeting with the government, which it was great, these meetings. One of them was with Tom Tugendhat, the Ministry of State for Security, which he agreed with everything that I said. The second meeting was with the Foreign Office, which they agreed with every set that I said. They didn't disagree with one sentence of my reasoning. And in the end, Foreign Office, Lord Tariq Ahmad, he said to me, we see IRGC exactly as you see them. I said, so, okay, if you see them like that, so let's move on from talking and words to action and prescribe them. And we are where we are at the moment. On the day 72, my body couldn't tolerate that anymore. I hospitalized for 2 weeks. And 2 weeks ago, I've gone back there. I am on sitting with some of the friends there in sit-in protest in front of UK's Foreign Affairs Office. Tomorrow is going to be the 100th day. And we are going to continue till we achieve this together. But we need to be strong together in this particular matter. And some people, they ask me why it's very important that UK prescribe IRGC. Today, the hands of IRGC, at least the leader of West, understand are not only in region, are not only IRGC is not only threatening Iranians, Israelis, Ukrainians. They are in Western capital. They killing people. They continue killing people. Look what happened to Salman Rushdie. They were close to, as you mentioned, assassinate some of the politicians. Masih Ali-Nejad, the Iranian journalist in America. So they know today they have to do something. But UK is very important. Why UK? We are very close in UK in order to prescribe IRGC. And the other 27 countries of EU, of course, after Brexit, UK separated from EU, but still those 27 countries, they look in at the UK, see what UK is going to do on this particular matter. New Zealand, Australia, Canada, these countries, they are waiting for UK to see what UK does in this matter. So that's why UK is very important for us to prescribe this terrorist organization, which is the godfather of all these little organization, is very important for us. So, but in UK, the strange thing is this: the UK government prescribed Hezbollah a few years ago by the great work of Lord Polak, which is going to be here, I hope, any minute. So the IRGC is the main supporter of Hezbollah. Actually, IRGC is the founder of Hezbollah. So legally, we have to do this in UK. They had to do it ages ago, not now. But there are some, as I understand, one of the politicians, Alicia Kearns, said to me, and not just to me, that day, when she said it to me, it was on the day 26 of my hunger strike, when she came down, and for the first time, my hunger strike recognized by the government and mentioned by Alicia Kearns in the parliament. She said, Americans, Biden administration, hold UK back from prescribing IRGC, and the reasoning is this: we are in middle of hostage exchange with Iranians. So I said, this is absolutely wrong. Hostage taking is their main policy. Basically, is the first policy of IRGC. That's why they take hostage, to control us, to to give direction to us and put us where we are at the moment. I can end this. I can
Vahid,
end my
yeah, I want you to share an additional data point that you shared with Aviram and me in London and subsequently. Your activism, your hunger strike, your connections with officials in the UK government and the parliaments have captured the imagination of millions in Iran. And can you talk about the influence that these last weeks have had on the Iranian public and some of the Iranian religious leadership that have spread your work and the dangers the IRGC represents at great risk to them because they're in Iran, but what effect it's had on the public discourse in Iran?
That's a very good point. I was surprised myself because from the beginning of my hunger strike, I never expected anybody in Iran mention my name because that's the red line. IRGC is the red line of the government. So, and I'm standing straight in front of IRGC and asking UK government to prescribe it, to prescribe this. But few weeks after my hunger strike, then we saw the pictures of people writing my name on the walls on different cities and say, we are supporting you, Vahid, hashtag IRGC terrorists. Then the day that I hospitalized and I announced I broke my hunger strike, Maulavi Abdul Hamid, the leader of 30 million population of Sunnis in Iran, tweeted, I am very glad that Vahid Beheshti broke his hunger strike. We need Vahid Beheshti because he's after justice and the right of people. Dr. Sayyid Mustafa Azmayesh, one of the great figure, the leader of at least 12, 13 million Sufis, Shia Sufis, he done 2 programs, I think half an hour, specifically about my hunger strike. And he says, what Vahid done and is not for himself, is for the people of Iran, and elaborate on that on 2 programs. I had meeting with the chief rabbi of Ukrainian from this side, and all I can say majority, if I don't say no, all of them, majority of opposition leaders in these 72 days, they came and visited me where I am. On the day 5th, the son of previous king of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, with Miss Shirin Ebadi, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, they came and saw me, and Hamid Esmailiun, Masih Ali Nejad, all these political figures and leaders, they came and saw me. And the surprise part of this, even these different parties who they have different political view from each other, and they are not accepting each other, even they have some discussion with him, they all came and they gave support, their support to me and said, we're supporting you because IRGC is the goal of all of us.
Yeah, there you go.
And the rally of 29th of April, which was the day 66 of my hunger strike, was the, I would say, historical rally, I think, in the whole history of these 40 years that we had rally in different cities outside of Iran, because that was the only rally, basically, that Iranian government officially warned UK government in their media and said, this rally is interfering in our internal politics with UK government. So UK government should cancel this rally. But this rally happened. Thousands of people, around 8,000-9,000 people participate in this rally from all different political group and different diaspora of Iranians. So
I think that's the important point. That's a very important point. This cross-party support that you have with political groups and parties that normally would not agree on issues of importance have agreed. You've really bridged the gap across political discourses and parties. One of your greatest supporters and perhaps uniters of your particular activism, Vahid, as well as the entire issue of the IRGC, has been Lord Polak, and Lord Polak has just joined us now on this national security Zoom roundtable. Lord Polak, welcome. Thank you very much. We understand all the way from Jerusalem, and it's understood across the UK. You've had more influence than anyone else in the Lords and perhaps in both houses of Parliament on this issue. Please share some of your insights with us, Lord Polak, about Vahid and the great work that he and Mattie have done, and from your point of view, the urgency of prescribing the IRGC.
Okay, well, thank you, and I hope you can hear me loud and clear. My apologies for being late, and this is partly the brilliance of your organization that goes across the world. I actually thought this was 4 o'clock UK time, not 4 o'clock Israel time, which is why I was late. And it also means that I'm not rushing away, although I'm sitting in Golders Green, for those people that know it, outside Golders Green station. Look, you've had the most important person on today, and that is Vahid. Vahid has led, whilst others talk, whilst governments deliberate, while people sit around and do wringing their hands, what Vahid decided to do is enough of that. Let's actually get down to tachlis. Let's do something. And what he decided to do, which was extremely brave, was to starve himself to gain the attention of the government and others in the fight that many of us have been involved in for a long period of time. And that is to prescribe the IRGC in its entirety as a terrorist organization. The problem we've got is that there are parts of government, arms of government across the Western world who are often living in the past, fighting all the battles. I hope that police car going past is not for you, Vahid. Give me 1 second, everybody. It's gone. So the governments or the advisors to government, so I'm referring to the FCDO, I'm even referring to the State Department, who actually, if you press them hard enough, would actually, I think, roll back on what they did under the previous president about the IRGC. And my concern all the way through has been that the Americans have been telling the Brits that it's not really a good idea to prescribe, although we've done it, keep the connections, keep the contacts with the Iranians. We think that's ridiculous. I think that's ridiculous. The IRGC are responsible for all the things that we all know, not just in Iran, not just in the Middle East, but much further afield, including here in the UK. And they need to be prescribed as a terrorist body. And I'm behind everything that Vahid has done, and Mattie, and tried to support them in any shape or form. And I am particularly glad, I can say this in public, that he has not carried on the non-eating, because, as I said to you a few times, Vahid, anything that would happen to you would be a victory to them. We don't want that. We need you fighting for the right thing to be done. And God willing, inshallah, we will get there.
Inshallah, God willing. Thank you, Lord Polak, very much for your insights. And we'll look forward to, as the Jerusalem Center team comes back to London next week, we'll look forward to continuing these not only the discussions, but what we call the operationalization of this global diplomatic program.
Yeah, I think if I can just add, you may have touched on this already. I think what needs to be pointed out to Western governments is not only what Iran are doing, as I said earlier, inside their own country, but obviously much wider. But I think in terms of, most of these governments can not multitask, and they can't think more than one. So they're concentrating, rightly, in many ways, on the Ukraine situation and the war that Putin has imposed on the European soil. But what's really important and they should be reminded, is what the Iranians are doing to help the Russians. This is serious and needs real prompt action. We know what the Iranian regime are doing and what they're trying to do, and I think it's incumbent on us all to raise this. You know, again, I'm just adding one point again, and that is this: the British government eventually, and I say eventually, prescribed Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. It took a long time. It took us a long time to change the thinking of the officials. And we got there. And by the way, we got there in the United Kingdom because of a Home Secretary at the time who was a British-born Muslim who understood what Hezbollah were doing. And he was the one, Sajid Javid, who ensured that we prescribed the Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. The argument is simple. We all know that the IRGC are the parent body. The unruly child, if you like, was Hezbollah or Hamas. They've all been prescribed. Why on earth they don't go for the parent body, I have no idea. So these are the arguments that need to be used. And I know Dan, through your organization and people across the world, will continue to take this fight to every government to do it. I'm quite convinced we'll get there. It's just how soon, and we need to keep pressurizing to get there as soon as possible.
Thank you, Lord Polak. I think what you leave us with is this idea that the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs can be quite helpful in prosecuting this idea that people in the West, especially decision makers and even experts and scholars, have sometimes conflated the political political profile, if you will, of an organization like Hezbollah, which has, you know, according to its own declaration, a military wing and a political wing. And we know the challenges in France and other countries with trying to differentiate between a political wing and the military wing. If you speak to people on the ground, they will say very clearly there is no difference between the political wing.
Well, Dan, even Hezbollah themselves don't accept the two wings. This was a false thing that was brought together where, you know, we tried it a little bit in Northern Ireland some years back too. It's a nonsense, and even Hezbollah themselves know it's a nonsense. By the way, you were right. Jerusalem, your organization, the center, could do enormous amounts. And one particular thing, which again is real and upcoming, I think you know, is because we had a brief conversation about this. The British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, will be in Washington, D.C. next week on, I think, Tuesday. They will have a meeting with the president. They will have a joint press conference. It will be really important for colleagues in D.C., any of those listening, to be able to put the question to the two of them together, to get to understand what the IRGC are up to. And in congratulating, if you like, one of those members of the panel, which will be the President Biden, even if it wasn't his actual idea, that the IRGC are prescribed, the pressure could be put on to the British Prime Minister at that press conference next week and while he's there. So I know that you have colleagues over in DC, and this is a great opportunity.
Absolutely. And you know, Lord Polak, one of the most important members of the team, we would call it the Polak Vahid team, is no less than Vahid's wife, Mattie Heaven, who's done an extraordinary job, really on not only on behalf of women's rights in Iran, but on behalf of human rights across the Iranian diaspora and for the West in general. Mattie, can you share a few minutes of your insights, also mentioning the human rights assaults on women in Iran, which has sometimes gone undernoticed and underestimated. And you're really one of the world's leading experts on that, as well as, you know, the larger human rights challenge that the IRGC poses, not only for Iranians, but for the entire free world. Mattie, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much to you and the whole team in JCPA. Appreciate having us here today. Yes, before I start, when the audience have time later after this call, I call everyone to actually go and Google the logo of IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, because it's something that we pass by, we notice it, but if you look carefully, it has a sign of a globe, a hand, and an arm of a gun. And that symbol is exactly what they are about. A global Islamic state. I think what we need to do is highlight what they actually are for their action. We know Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps recognize themselves for their activity, that they want to have an Islamic global state. From their mission is protect the Iranian revolution inside Iran, and also mission to make a world Islamic state. And because of that, they have different strategies, short-term and long-term. One of their long-term strategies is using Western values, our democracy, and I would sometimes call it a bit of our naivety against us. I have seen in the last 34 years in England a rise of radicalization and extremism. And when you look at the root of it, a lot of times you actually find it's the hands of IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Iran is the 5th richest country in the world in terms of their oil, and 2nd in gas. IRGC owns 80% of Iran's wealth. Whilst the people of Iran, under 50% of the population, live under the poverty state, this regime, I usually call them a mafia. There's no difference between them than a mafia state. They use their money, apart from their proxy wars, is to radicalize their ideology and export it outside of Iran. Every year, they export 100,000 people from a university called Al-Mustafa University. They have 60 universities around the world. It was set up in 2007 by Khamenei himself, and their mission is to make Islamic State. While we're watching how they're using our democratic values and using charity centers, Islamic centers, because of the freedom of speech that we have here, because of the freedom of religion that we need to give them, inside of Iran, in Tehran, with 30 million population, Sunnis don't even have a right to have a mosque inside of Iran, in Tehran. They suppress every group that doesn't follow them. Iran has got the highest number of execution per capita. When women are killed because they're not wearing hijab properly, they come to the West, abuse our democracy, and have a long-term plan in next 10 to 20 or 30 years, or even shorter. And we're watching this happening, and no action is being taken up to us. Just only recently in London, after 3 years of investigation that has been highlighted, one Islamic center, who more than 6 Islamic centers in UK have had vigils of IRGC leader Qasem Soleimani, who was killed in UK. They had vigils, and these are the signs that we're witnessing, and no action is being taken. And this is a real serious threat to our freedom of speech, to our freedom of democracy, while they're coming and threatening journalists in the West not to carry on their activity. When Metropolitan Police says we cannot protect journalists when we have to leave from UK to go to Washington for practice, this gives a very wrong sign to the Islamic Republic of Iran, that they got their arms like an octopus around the world. So when it comes down to human rights violations, we know that Iran has got one of the highest records of human rights violations inside of Iran. But we're now witnessing the same activity is now around the globe. And let me tell you, friends, one of the ways that Iranian regime have been successful, and a lot of people say with this much brutality, how can they be lasting for this long? How can people put up with this? How come politicians are taking more strong measures? As I alluded earlier on, is that Iran is one of the richest countries in the world in terms of oil and gas. They have had 44 years time to work on strong lobbies. They have had time to work on fake news. One of the tactics that they do, and now they're using social media, they got over 20,000 recruited armies of cyber armies. This is their figures, it might be more, but they've stated. By defamating anyone against them, opposition groups outside of Iran, by causing fake news about any activities inside of Iran and outside. And what that does, it makes confusion to the outside non-Iranians. If you're a politician, you think, what is going on? And this is a sense that I've had as a politician, thinking the truth is something, and you can see how they're using the media against that. And this is something that needs to be really highlighted. And second area that I would like to mention, going back to the lobbyists, is that Iran has managed to use lobbyists in their favor by saying that because Iranian regime is so brutal that we need to keep the doors open and negotiate with them. For 44 years, we've never moved to any positive negotiation. Would that not be enough for the Western politicians to learn, to say what improvement have we done with this despotic regime in the last 44 years, except more terror activities, more destabilizing, more? Right now, the biggest concern in the world is once they reach the 90% of uranium-enriched weapons, welcome to second North Korea, there is no more negotiation. An Iranian regime knows that they are buying time while we're sitting around the table having discussions whether we should agree or disagree. They are carrying on with their activities. They're adhering with what their mission is. They're continuing, and we're not taking any action. And this is one thing that I want to highlight, and I have been highlighting, is that we cannot no longer go ahead with appeasing policy with any dictators. And that's what the Iranian regime wants. They want to create this atmosphere that they are so brutal that if you take any actions, they become more of a terrorist. Well, if you're a terrorist, then you're a terrorist. And we have to recognize them for their action in the West. And that is my very strong message for our Western politicians. I know we have a lot of support. I know that in England, there is a lot of support. But in terms of action, it's time to action, because there is a sense of urgency. And why there's an urgency, as we mentioned, we don't want to give them, Iran is buying time. And right now inside of Iran, the people of Iran have made their say in the last 9 months. They called it a revolution. The world is not acknowledging them, but inside of Iran, people are brave women and children, and people are coming out in the street knowing that they could be killed immediately and calling for a revolution. And what we need is for the Western world to recognize that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is my final message.
Thank you, Mattie. We also have some questions from some of our participants. If we could put the questions back up on the screen, then yeah. Our colleague Aaron Bronstein notes that the Jerusalem Post had published a piece of his saying that if war breaks out with Iran, one should target the IRGC primarily as opposed to the military, so that after it has the balance of power, so it can take over. So after it has the balance of power, so that it can take over to save the country, not the regime. I think the essential note here is to target, his sense was to target the IRGC as opposed to I guess Moise or the general military establishment in Iran.
Am I just
Yeah, just your comment or Vahid's comment or Lord Polak's comment, to any one of you. The idea that the IRGC, which is essentially it's a multinational corporation, headquartered in Tehran, so that if you hit the IRGC as opposed to any of the other leadership groups, then you're really uprooting and undermining A, the legitimacy, and B, the actual political power behind the country.
Well, the IRGC is the structure backbone of this regime. Okay, that's why they are surviving, and it's through this Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that they do the brutal killing, and all the money is controlled by them. So when we talk about prescription of IRGC in UK, it's actually going after once they are prescribed in UK, then we are going after their money laundering, any connection through diplomatic channels or charity centers or through the mosques that they're legitimately now doing, that we can actually go after. I'm not sure whether I understood the question of that, but what we're saying in the West is that Europe, UK, the rest of the world should put them into the list of terrorist organization, and so that we can actually isolate this despotic regime outside of Iran. Inside of Iran, the people of Iran are actually calling for change, and they don't want to be living in that situation. And if that's the question that we have to go after, because they are the main cause of the terror activities around the world, is because of IRGC.
I wanted to ask the three of you, to what extent do you sense a deterrent in the re-engagement, the diplomatic re-engagement, if you will, between Saudi and the Iranian regime? What is there a deterrent message, even in perception, to the West in that re-engagement that may become an obstacle or not?
Well, I'll jump in on the previous question, if I may. The questioner was 100% right. I mean, that's why everybody's trying to work to the IRGC are the government. They are the agents of the government. They are totally integrated. And so, of course, attacking them, if you like, or if they were removed, then things would be a lot different. So entirely right. On the Saudi and Iranian sort of coming together, I don't think there's anything particularly bad in that generally. I think I'd prefer all countries to talk with each other, whoever they are. I think the only message on that from me is who did it, and allegedly, or we're told that it was the Chinese who did it. And why did the Chinese do it is because it seems that the United States have sort of removed themselves a little from the action, when I mean action in the diplomacy. If the United States removes itself, it creates a vacancy. It creates a hole that needs to be plugged, and the Chinese didn't take long to plug it. And I think that is the message back to the United States and to the EU and others, is that if we want to be part of something, we want to make something happen, we want people to come together, we need to be in there doing it. If we're not, others will come in, and actually we may not quite like what they've done, because there's no doubt that sort of Russia, Iran, China, you can see where this is going. And I think if the United States withdraws, as I say, it creates a problem.
Absolutely. Lord Polak, that is the sense, I think, in Jerusalem as well, just in terms of the ongoing anchoring of communication in Farsi. I want to share with you again that the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs is launching a Farsi and Arabic communication center that connects the entire Farsi-speaking world in country and around the globe, so that the power of this communication will continue. This is something that hasn't been done before out of a Diplomacy National Security Institute. So that's something that we're doing, I think, to contribute to the discourse and perhaps strengthen the political will and capabilities of people on this particular mission. How strong is the opposition in Iran, and what can be done from the outside in order to strengthen the hands of those in the opposition in Iran?
I can elaborate on this, but I can, on previous two questions, I can say the great example of this, I always repeat that in that 72 days of hunger strike, in any interview, I said IRGC is the heart of regime. So by targeting IRGC, you targeting the heart of the Iranian regime. And this, let's go and see this from their point of view. Their only request from America to come back to the table of JCPOA was this: remove IRGC from the terrorist list of America. So then we understand how important is this for the Iranian regime. So that's from the one side. But the other question about Saudi Arabia, I don't see it as the media published this news, because the main person who was engaged in the sorting out the relationship between Saudi and Iran, of course, was Xi Jinping after his trip to Saudi, but it was Ali Shamkhani, which has been removed last week, and the expectation was some kind of new news about the relation between Saudi and Iran, but suddenly we saw Ali Shamkhani, from the head of national security of Iranian, removed. So there's a big conflict inside I'm going to go from here to your third question. We see the big conflict inside the Iranian government at the moment. So there is not, they are not united. They know they are falling down. They know, now I'm coming to your question. What is the majority of people in Iran first, that they don't want this regime? From point of view of someone who has been in this field day and night for past at least 16 years, I can say more than 90% of majority of people, of a majority of Iranian population, not they don't like this regime, they hate this regime. They have so much hate and anger against this regime. That's from inside of the Iran. But outside of Iran, we have different group of opposition. They need to be united. And I think our camp, which I call it, Buck Blackman call it peace camp. Some people, they call it the love and peace camp against this brutal regime. So our camp was the first, I would say, movement that could unite all of these from different point of view together in past 44 years. I had the support of all the supporters of Reza Pahlavi, the son of previous king. I had a Democrat party. I have all these different Kurdish party in Iran. I had even MEK, their people, they came and they said, we support you, Vahid, on this mission. We all have this. So we managed to unite all of them. So outside of the country, we need, and from the day one, I said, I am not affiliated to, I think that was my winning card. because I am not, I don't call myself politician. So I said, I am not affiliated to any political group. I am a fighter. I'm a freedom fighter. I'm a human rights activist. And my mission is to overthrowing regime by the help of you people. But that's the automated goal. To do that, we need to target and hit the heart of the regime. Heart of the regime is IRGC. And we have to do it in the most effective place in the world. At the moment, this most effective place in the world is UK. So this is how I plan this.
So let's take that particular point as just a diving board into a question that Yossi Kuperwasser, Brigadier General Kuperwasser, who is a senior director at the Jerusalem Center, asked, what can Israel do to help this particular effort? And how effective was the visit of His Excellency Pahlavi in Israel recently at the invitation of Minister Gila Gamliel in the government of Israel?
If you want, I can say something about this, and then we go to Mattie or Polak, if you guys okay about that. I think the visit of Mr. Pahlavi from Israel was very strategic. From the beginning, there were people against that. I totally was agreeing with that. In that time, that was very strategic. But what Israel can do, Israel, us and the people from Israel, we have the common enemy. We were great friends always in the history. So we need to help each other. We need to be united and against this common enemy. We don't have any more choice. The leader of Iranian regime, many times they said, our mission is to wipe out Israel from the map of the world. And from other side, they're killing us, Iranian. They're killing us, journalists, human rights activists. So we have the same enemy, and we are great friends. History told us. Israel, now they have they have many opportunities. I think it's going to be really easy for the leader of Israel to help us as the opposition, to give us the, I would say, opportunity to work together against this regime. The main thing is we need to unite the opposition and help them against the regime. If the opposition united, I think that's the main step. As soon as we unite the opposition all together, the regime doesn't have a chance to even be there for 1 week.
Understood.
If I may come in on this one, first of all, my best wishes to Yossi Kuperwasser. I haven't seen for a while. The answer, I think, is quite simple. When Eli Cohen, the foreign minister at the moment, seems to be doing exactly what a foreign minister does, and he's traveling, he's seeing prime ministers, foreign ministers across the world. What should be happening, I don't know if it is that the number one thing on his agenda when he meets with foreign ministers and prime ministers across the world should be IRGC. There's no doubt that, of course, we all know that the Iranian regime should be and is number one of concern to the state of Israel. And if it isn't number one on the list of discussions between foreign ministers and prime ministers, and also the president when he visits, then it should be. And perhaps the JC, your organization, basically can ensure that when this is put on number one on every time an Israeli minister meets with a minister from anywhere in the world. And I think only then the sort of message becomes clear. Israel has got its own problems with Iran, and Vahid is right. You know, there's a common enemy here, and Israel will have to look after itself in the way that it does. But as I say, Israel could play a very important part diplomatically to ensure that this is top of every single meeting. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily have to be the meeting of foreign ministers. It can be a minister of agriculture, or minister of, whenever they go to meet ministers abroad, it should be number one on the agenda.
Very well said, Lord Polak. And I promised everyone that when we hit 5, we're at 5:02, that we would allow people to go for afternoon tea. And depending where you are, it might be the pub, or it might be, and if it's in Israel, it's probably to have a falafel before dinner. So allow me, please, to thank all of you, Vahid, Mattie, Lord Polak, for your work and your intellectual insights as well, moral clarity on this particular issue, which is, I think the undertone here and the underlying message is the great urgency of taking action against the IRGC now, not only because of its assault against the US and British-led Western alliance, but clearly because the race for regional supremacy under a nuclear umbrella, as Mattie points out, will completely reduce the leverage that those trying to stop the Iranian regimes and the IRGC's race for regional, and ultimately, as the Supreme Leader has said, the Viat al-Faqih, he said global leadership is what they are looking, global control is what the leadership itself. So we'll leave it we'll leave it there for now, and we will continue to establish our communication center in Farsi so that we can have you back time and time again, and intensify the intellectual and communication efforts and diplomatic moves on this particularly strong issue. Look forward to seeing all of you very shortly in the UK. And so we'll say salam, shalom, goodbye, and thank you for sharing your thinking with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to see everyone. Thank you all for joining us as well. Those of us who participate in our audience, we deeply appreciate it. Come to jcpa.org to find out about the Iranian issue and other issues in the region that are quite positive in what is happening between Israel and the Arab world, and as well as Africa in the greater region. Thank you all.